I'm Ethan. My wife had just returned from a quick trip to Barcelona. A bachelorette party for her younger cousin. Just a group of girls, a few nights out, and then back to normal life. At least, that's how she described it to me. I didn't question it. I've never been the type to control where she goes or who she spends time with. When she said she wouldn't drink, wouldn't do anything I should worry about, I believed her. When she placed her hand on her belly and reminded me of the baby we were waiting for, I nodded, thinking everything would be fine. But I was wrong. It didn't start with a fight or some dramatic reveal. It started with a smile, a soft, familiar one. She walked out of the airport gates, dragging her suitcase, hugged me, and said Barcelona was amazing. Fun and relaxing, she said. There was nothing in her eyes, no hesitation, no tremble, that made me think anything was off. 3 days later, I got a message from an old friend. Just one line, cold, direct. But after I read it, I didn't sleep properly again. It came with a video, less than a minute long. Blurry, shaky, but there was no mistaking it. I watched it 3 times, not to confirm, but to try and find a reason, any reason, to believe it wasn't her. But it was. The same woman who held my hand in the kitchen just a week earlier, swearing she'd take care of herself, for the baby. The one who promised she wouldn't touch a single drop of alcohol in Barcelona. The one I trusted with everything I had. This is my story, about how once trust cracks, it never really goes back to what it was. One promise, one trip, and something that should have never happened. I'm going to tell you all of it. No exaggeration. No sugarcoating. Just the truth, exactly as it unfolded. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, stick around till the end. This story might make you take a second look at what you think you know, and if something here hits close to home, hit like. It'll help me keep telling these stories the way they deserve to be told. We'd been married for 2 years. Still pretty fresh, I guess, but long enough that I thought I knew the woman beside me. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. And more importantly, we had a shared goal, starting a family. Those first couple of years went by quietly. No wild nights, no big drama. We went to doctor appointments together, tracked ovulation, changed our diets, cut down on caffeine. Haley even started doing morning yoga to prep her body for pregnancy. Everything was structured, intentional, like 2 grown adults trying to build something real. I never doubted Haley's commitment. But there was one thing I could never quite shake off: alcohol. She wasn't a heavy drinker, not an addict. But every time she drank, even just 1 glass, something shifted. The clarity, the self-awareness, the ability to stay grounded, all of it would vanish. I saw it back when we were dating, once at her friend's birthday party, another time on a weekend trip with her coworkers. A few cocktails in, and she'd get loud, impulsive, sometimes even blackout. It wasn't that cute, clumsy kind of drunk you see in rom-coms. It was the kind that left you uneasy, not because I didn't trust her, but because it felt like she stopped being herself. We talked about it, seriously. One night after a rough evening out, she sat down on the couch, eyes red, and admitted she didn't handle alcohol well. That she felt embarrassed every time she lost control. And that moving forward, especially now that we were trying for a baby, she wouldn't drink again. I believed her. And honestly, I didn't feel the need to double-check that promise. After we got married, she stayed away from alcohol. We turned down party invites, unfollowed some of those loud party friends. Life quieted down. We settled into a rhythm. We chose that rhythm because we both knew that raising a kid meant being ready to be parents first. I thought that was enough. But the thing about alcohol, that one tiny, seemingly harmless detail, ended up being the very thing that cracked everything wide open. Haley told me she was pregnant on a Monday morning. No grand reveal, no surprise box with baby shoes or some Pinterest-level setup. She just walked out of the bathroom, pregnancy test in hand, laid it gently on the kitchen counter, and looked at me. She didn't have to say a word. I saw it in her eyes, a slight tremble, that mix of fear and joy. I heard my own heartbeat pounding as I picked up the test. 2 lines. clear as day. I wrapped her in the tightest hug, and in that moment, every uncertainty just disappeared. All the sacrifices, the dietary changes, the ovulation tracking, everything finally led to this. I just stood there, one hand on her back, feeling like the world had cracked open to a brand new chapter. 3 days later, Haley was invited to Barcelona. Her cousin's bachelorette party, a cousin I'd never met, but from the way Haley described her, she was intense. The whole group were her college friends, known for treating weekends like an excuse to go full Vegas. The trip was set for 3 days. Classic, last wild weekend before tying the knot type of thing. Haley told me about it while packing, laughing as she folded clothes like it was some casual picnic. But something inside me started to tighten. I didn't know what it was exactly, but it didn't sit right. I'm not the kind of husband who tells his wife what she can or can't do. I've never laid down rules like that, but she was pregnant now. Early pregnancy is fragile, physically and emotionally. Add in Haley's history with alcohol. It was hard for me to stay calm, so I told her, gently. No accusation, no lectures. I said, I trust you. But I also know how environments like that can be. Everyone's hyped. Nobody's watching anyone too closely. You're carrying our child. This isn't the time to test your limits. She didn't snap back like I feared. No defensiveness. No, you don't trust me speech. She took my hand, placed it on her still flat stomach, and said she understood. That she already told everyone she was pregnant. That she wouldn't drink. That she was going just to support her cousin, not to mess with what we were building. I looked at her. I heard the steadiness in her voice, and I wanted to believe. To be honest, a part of me still worried. But I also knew, love without trust isn't love. So I helped her finish packing, drove her to the airport, hugged her tight at the security gate. On the way home, I kept telling myself it was just 3 days, that everything would be fine, that a woman about to be a mother, after everything we'd said, after every promise, wouldn't throw it all away for a moment of reckless fun. I wanted to believe that with everything I had. Haley got back on a Sunday afternoon. I picked her up from the airport, just like I always did whenever she traveled for work or short trips. She walked out of the arrival gate with her suitcase in tow, oversized sunglasses on, hair tied back neatly. She looked a little tired but smiled when she saw me. She gave me a quick hug, kissed my cheek, and said the trip was fun but chill. On the drive home, she talked nonstop about how amazing the food in Spain was, how lively Barcelona felt, how her cousin almost lost her engagement ring at the beach and everyone had to dig through the sand to help find it. And I listened, and I felt a bit lighter, because nothing in her tone, her stories, or her eyes gave me any reason to think something was off. She seemed fine, like the same Haley I knew. But then, a few days later, things started to feel off. Haley wasn't touching me as much. The morning hugs faded. At night, when I reached out to hold her in bed, she'd turn over and say she was tired. That feeling of closeness started to fade, slowly, like some invisible wall was building between us, and I had no idea why. I didn't jump to the worst conclusion. She was pregnant. The first month is tough. Fatigue, mood swings, hormones shifting all over the place. It could have been anything. Morning sickness, stress. I kept telling myself that, and I'm not the kind of guy to press his wife for answers to every little thing, so I didn't ask much. I just did what I could to support her. Made ginger tea, did the laundry, even found her a new brand of prenatal vitamins because the old ones were making her nauseous. Then came Wednesday morning. I'd just come back from the grocery store with bags of vegetables and juice when my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan, an old college friend. We didn't talk that often, but we were close enough that if something was important, we'd let each other know. His message was just one line. I saw the clip. Hope you're okay. I froze right there in the kitchen, groceries still in my hands. Reread the message, again and again. What clip? Was this meant for someone else? Did he text the wrong person? I texted back right away. What clip? What the hell are you talking about? He read it. No reply. And in that silence, Something in my chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain. A quiet voice in the back of my head whispered what I didn't want to admit. This wasn't just a mix-up. This wasn't nothing. And if you've ever stared at your phone, your hands shaking, because a part of you already knows the truth before you even see it. Leave a comment. Sometimes, just knowing someone else gets it, that's enough. I couldn't wait any longer. When Ryan still hadn't replied, I called him. He picked up after a few rings, and the hesitation in his voice was immediate, like he was bracing himself to say something he didn't even want to hear out loud. Before I could speak, he said it first. "Bro, I didn't know you hadn't seen it. I thought you already knew. I'm sorry." I cut him off. I didn't have the patience. "Send it. Right now." He paused for a second, then said quietly, "All right, but brace yourself. It's not easy to watch." Seconds later, the video came through. It was a phone recording. A little shaky, not the best quality, but still painfully clear. Clear enough to see everything that mattered. Everything that hurt. Haley was in the middle of a crowded room, dim lights flashing, background music thumping. She was wearing that tight red dress, the one she'd modeled for me in the mirror before the trip, asking, "Do you think this is too much?" She looked drunk. Not buzzed, not tipsy cute, but gone. Her body limp, movements loose. She was sitting in the lap of a shirtless guy, probably a hired stripper for the party. Her arms were around his neck. And then, they kissed. Not a playful peck. Not an accident. She leaned in, closed her eyes, kissed him slowly, deliberately. His hands were all over her, neck, chest, thighs. The women around them were cheering, shouting, recording from other angles. But I couldn't hear any of it. My heartbeat was pounding too loud. I watched it a second time. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because I needed to be sure it was her. Her face, her hair, her eyes. And the small necklace, silver with a tiny charm, I gave her for our first anniversary. It was her. The third time, I slowed it down, not to catch more detail, but to find something, anything that might tell me she didn't want it. A moment of hesitation, a look of discomfort, something that said she got caught up, that this wasn't who she was. But no, she was smiling. Light, carefree, like none of it mattered. I set my phone down, laced my fingers together. The room around me was dead silent, but inside my head it was chaos. And surprisingly, my first thought wasn't about the cheating. Not the kiss. Not even the man. It was the baby. Haley was pregnant. She had promised no drinking, no risks. So what the hell did I just watch? That level of intoxication? That recklessness? Alcohol was clearly in the mix. But what else? What didn't that clip show? And are we sure that night didn't go even further? I couldn't tell what hurt more. Watching her in someone else's arms, or realizing she could gamble our child's safety for the sake of one wild night. But what I did know, without a doubt, was that after seeing that video, I could never look at my wife the same way again. That night, after Haley had finished showering and was drying her hands in the kitchen, I called her into the living room. She walked out with a small towel draped over her shoulder, probably thinking I was going to ask something about the pregnancy, or maybe just about dinner or laundry. I didn't look her in the eyes right away. I was already sitting, elbows on knees, fingers interlaced. The room felt heavy, quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then I finally spoke. "Is there anything you want to tell me about Barcelona?" She looked up, hesitated. A few seconds of silence. Then she frowned. "What do you mean?" Not surprising. That's what people say when they know something's coming. But what chilled me wasn't the words, it was the way she said them. Her voice didn't waver. No flicker of guilt, no confusion, just calm. I let out a slow breath, reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. "Watch this." She took the phone, and I watched her face instead of the screen. 10 seconds in, her eyes widened. By the 15th second, her hand flew to her mouth. And then the panic washed over her features like a wave crashing down. I don't know who filmed this, It's not what you think. It was a dare or something. They made me do it. I was too drunk. I don't remember much. It was just a kiss. It wasn't serious, I swear. I said nothing, just watched her stumble through excuses, choking on her own words. A moment later, I asked her, "Who was that guy?" She answered quickly. Too quickly. "I don't know. Probably some random guy. One of my cousin's friends, maybe." Not even 2 minutes later, when I calmly asked again, her answer changed. Maybe the bartender? Or the guy who served us dinner? I don't really remember. The story cracked at the seams. Her voice trembled, but not the way someone sounds when they're wrecked with guilt. It was the kind of tremble you hear when someone's desperately trying to remember what lie they told last time, just so they don't contradict themselves. I wasn't planning to keep pressing, but as she sat there, crying, repeating scattered apologies like a broken record, something inside me just didn't let go yet. I turned my head, lowered my voice, almost a whisper. "That night, did you sleep with someone?" She froze. Her eyes locked onto mine like I just slapped her across the face. The silence that followed was deafening. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, maybe more. I saw it in her eyes, the battle happening in real time. The mental weighing of whether to keep lying or to finally let the truth crawl out. Then she looked down, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. I don't really remember. The next morning, I woke up in the hotel room, still fully dressed. I swear, I don't know exactly what happened. I sat up straight, stared at her. "Haley, I'm going to ask you again. That night, who did you sleep with? And what happened?" She started trembling. Not the kind of nervous twitch you fake. Her whole body looked like it wasn't responding to her anymore. Her face went pale, and her hands, gripping each other, started scratching nervously at the back of her own hand. It's something she's always done when she feels cornered. She swallowed hard, then whispered, barely audible. "It was the guy from the video, I think. After they made me drink a few more rounds, everything's hazy. But I know. Something happened. I'm sorry. We didn't keep in touch. I don't know his name. There wasn't a second time, I swear." And just like that, something inside me broke. Not with a bang, not with shouting or throwing things, but quietly. Like a floor giving way beneath me. Haley broke down. Like truly broke down. She crawled closer, clutching my sleeve, crying harder than I'd ever seen her cry. "I'm sorry. I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was a stupid mistake. Please don't leave me." I didn't push her away, but I didn't hold her either. I just sat there, letting the sound of her sobs echo through that dim, quiet room. And I didn't say a single word, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just a mistake. This was the end. I stood up, quietly walked to the bedroom, grabbed a pillow and a blanket. Haley looked up through the tears, her face wrecked. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I just walked back into the living room, laid the blanket out on the couch, and lay down. That night might have been the longest night of my life. I lay there staring at the ceiling, not sleeping for a single second. Every sound in the house vanished, except the ticking of the clock, second by second, and the muffled sobs of Haley coming from the bedroom. All I could think about was that video. The look in her eyes when the panic hit. The long, suffocating silence before the truth came out. And then, the baby. A child who hadn't even taken shape yet, but was the reason behind every sacrifice I'd made. Everything I was trying to build. Everything I thought we were building together. And all through that endless night, I didn't keep asking myself, why did she do it? No, I kept asking, how the hell do you stay married to someone you can't trust anymore? I thought I'd hit rock bottom that night, but turns out rock bottom has levels, and I hadn't even reached the worst of it yet. About 3 days later, I was in the garage, trying to keep my mind busy by organizing shelves and wiping down boxes I hadn't touched in years. Just something to stop myself from thinking too much. That's when I got another message. This time from an old coworker. No pleasantries, no small talk. "Hey, I just saw a video on TikTok. Is that your wife?" I froze. A few seconds later, he sent the link. I clicked, and I swear I felt my heart fall out of my chest. It was the same clip, but this time, it wasn't some shaky phone footage shared in a private group chat. This one was edited, cropped, repackaged with loud, upbeat music and commentary from a well-known influencer in the manosphere, one of those guys who makes a living teaching men how to deal with modern women. He was laughing the whole time, pausing the video to zoom in on Haley, smiling, dancing, grinding on that stranger's lap, while saying, "This, fellas, is why you gotta be careful who you marry. She's pregnant, and this is what she's doing. Can you believe that?" The video had over 1 million views, thousands of comments, and they weren't just talking about her. They were talking about me. "Dude's a clown. Imagine marrying that. She's out here partying with another man's baby. Why is he still with her? What a joke." I sank to the floor right there in the garage, my back against the door. It felt like being stripped naked in front of a crowd, with no way to hide the hurt, no way to protect myself. Betrayal is one thing, but when that betrayal stops being a private wound and becomes viral entertainment for total strangers, it cuts deeper, so much deeper. I didn't feel like a man trying to process heartbreak anymore. I felt like a walking meme, a public failure, a punchline on someone else's feed. I used to think pain was something you carried alone, that even the worst moments in a relationship were at least yours. But not anymore. Not now. Not when the woman in that video, smiling, laughing, kissing a stranger, was my wife. And that flat stomach she pressed against him while dancing, that was supposed to be where our child was growing, where I thought life was beginning. But now it just felt like everything was unraveling, publicly, brutally, and completely out of my control. I used to think I'd walk away the moment the truth came out, but because of the baby, I stayed. Even though I couldn't see her as my wife anymore, I was still a father, or at least biologically, and that baby hadn't done anything wrong. So I told myself, just wait, let her have the child, then figure it out. I never said that to Haley. I just stayed, doing what a father was supposed to do. Drove her to checkups, made her vitamins, buckled her seatbelt when we got in the car. I didn't touch her like I used to, didn't look at her the same way, but I showed up. Not for her, but for the baby. Until one morning, around 6 a.m., Haley called out to me, panic in her voice. She was on the bathroom floor, clutching her stomach, pale and trembling. She said it hurt. Bad. Like something was being squeezed from the inside. I carried her to the car and drove straight to the hospital. She cried the entire ride, and it wasn't just fear of losing the baby. It was the fear of losing everything. I could feel it in the way she looked at me, like she was silently begging for something she no longer had the right to ask for. They rushed her into an ultrasound room. I sat outside, heart racing but head completely blank. When the doctor came out, he didn't have to say much. I saw it in his face. He sat beside me, spoke slowly. The heartbeat had stopped. The pregnancy was still early. The fetus was weak. It could have been the alcohol, or too much physical strain in those first few weeks. I nodded, didn't ask questions, didn't lash out, just nodded. Later, the nurse told me Haley was awake, and I could go in. She was lying on her side, fists clenched around the bedsheet, face turned to the wall. I couldn't see her face, but I heard her, quiet, choked sobs. When she finally turned to look at me, eyes red and swollen, she whispered just one thing. "I killed our baby." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, looking at her like she was someone I used to know, someone I once loved, and now barely recognized. Of course I felt sad. I had dreamed about that child. I pictured holding them, teaching them to ride a bike, hugging them after long days. But the grief wasn't sharp like I expected. It didn't stab me in the chest. It just spread, quietly, like a sadness I already saw coming. And strangely, in that moment, I also felt relieved. Not because I wanted this to happen. God, no. But because I finally knew. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to keep holding on to something that was crumbling in slow motion. Haley had lost everything in one reckless moment. And me, I just lost the last reason I had to stay. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. No fights, no negotiations. I didn't ask Haley for anything. Not the house, not the money, not some late apology. I just wanted out. Out of the life I once thought I'd grow old in. Quiet. Clean. Like closing a door that had been warped and rotting for a long time. Even now, sometimes I still think about all the what-ifs. What if Haley had just said no? What if she'd kept her promise? What if the baby had made it? What if this marriage hadn't ended like it did? But life doesn't work in what-ifs. I've learned this much. Some things, no matter how tightly you hold on, will still slip through your fingers. And when that happens, you only get 2 choices. Keep clinging to the ghost of what used to be, or let go and save yourself. I chose to let go. Not because I'm strong, but because there was nothing left to hold on to. And what about you? If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven? Or would you have walked away? What do you think is the right thing to do when trust has shattered into 100 pieces? Thanks for staying with me until the end. I hope somewhere in this story you found a piece of yourself too. And if someone out there is struggling in a marriage full of cracks, please know this: you're not alone. Thanks for listening. If this story hit home for you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, because next time, it just might be your story that finds its way here. I left just before midnight. Rachel didn't ask where I was going. 3 days later, she received the divorce papers. I knew because around noon that day, my phone rang. Her name lit up on the screen. For the first time in what felt like forever. I answered. On the other end was the sound of sobbing, raw, unfiltered, not performative, not dramatic, just panic wrapped in despair. "Why would you go this far?" she choked out. "It was just one dinner. I didn't even cross any lines. Can't we at least talk about this?" She paused, voice breaking. "We could try therapy. We could still fix this. Can't you just think about it?" I was quiet for a few seconds. Then I spoke, slow, steady. "You're just now starting to cry, but I've been quiet for a very long time." On the other end, I heard nothing but the sound of her breathing, shaky, broken, but no words came. And then I left her with just one sentence, like a door gently left ajar, but never again to be walked back through. "I'm calm enough to walk away. Are you brave enough to look at yourself?" I didn't say anything else. I didn't hang up right away either. I just let the silence sit there, long enough for her to understand it wasn't that I never tried. It's that she never heard me when I needed her to listen the most. And sometimes, a marriage doesn't end with a scream. It ends with a silence so long no one can hear each other anymore. After that final call, I didn't say anything else. Rachel tried to reach out a few more times over the next week. A few short texts, one long emotional email, scattered apologies mixed with questions like, "Does it really have to go this far?" And "Can't you reconsider?" But I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Just because everything she needed to hear, I'd already said. I'd said it with months of silence, with every time I swallowed my hurt, with the look in my eyes the night her friends picked apart my life like it was some failed business pitch. We went to court not long after. Everything moved quickly. No objections, no drama. Neither of us wanted to drag it out. Within 3 months, the divorce was finalized. No one cried. No one asked the other to stay. We just sat there, across from each other, quiet, distant, like two people who once knew everything, now reduced to signatures and silence. Then came the house, the only thing left between us. It wasn't much, but enough to bring us to one last conversation. I told her I didn't want it. I didn't want to live in a place where I had once felt so small. She borrowed money from her parents and bought me out of my share. It wasn't hard. Maybe for her, holding on to that house was the last way to convince herself she hadn't lost everything. I moved out a few weeks later, into a small apartment near the school. 1 bedroom, old wooden floors, a window that looked out onto a shared yard where kids played each afternoon. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Mornings got quieter. I'd wake up early, make coffee, read a few pages from an old book. No one compared me to someone else's husband. No backhanded comments wrapped in kindness. No sound of heels pacing on hardwood floors. Just stillness. And me, in a version of myself that didn't have to keep trying to be enough for someone else. About a year later, I heard something. Rachel and the man she'd had dinner with, they broke up. No scandal, no fallout, just didn't turn out the way she imagined. Her little circle broke apart too. Clara moved out of state. Erica ran into financial trouble. Jessica separated from her husband. And Rachel? I heard she pulled away from everyone. Lives alone now. Freelances, rarely goes out. I didn't feel happy when I heard that. I didn't feel sad either. It passed through me like a news report on the radio. Something distant, no longer tied to me. I just kept living. I'm still teaching. Still the middle-aged English teacher in a slightly wrinkled shirt, eating a simple lunch, speaking with a voice calm enough to help his students focus. No one calls me unambitious anymore. And more importantly, I'm no longer trying to prove anything. Life feels lighter now, not because I won, but because I let go at the right time. Someone once asked me, if she came back, would you forgive her? I just smiled and said, I was calm enough to walk away. Were you brave enough to face yourself? And maybe that's all there is. If this story made you think about silence, self-worth, or the quiet places where love phrase, feel free to leave a comment or share it with someone who might need it. You never know. It could be the exact wake-up call someone's been waiting for.